Greetings everyone. We're gathered here to figure out WTF was, is, or will be. Admiral Graf Spee? Let's dive in. The Admiral Graf Spee, part of the Deutschland class of armored ships, was often referred to as a pocket battleship by the British. This impressive vessel served in Nazi Germany's Kriegsmarine during World War II. Named in honor of Admiral Maximilian von Spee, a commander from World War I who led the East Asia Squadron and lost his life in the battles of Coronel and the Falkland Islands, the ship was built at the Kriegsmarine Werft shipyard in Wilhelmshaven. Construction began in October 1932, and by January 1936, the Admiral Graf Spee was ready for service. Although its official displacement was reported under the 10,000-ton limit set by the Treaty of Versailles, the ship's actual weight, fully loaded, reached over 16,000 tons. This gave the Graf Spee significantly more power and capability than intended by the treaty. Armed with 6 11-inch guns mounted in 2 triple turrets, the ship and its sister vessels were built to outgun any cruiser fast enough to challenge them. With a top speed of 28 knots, few ships in the British and French fleets could match the Graf Spee in both speed and firepower. Between 1936 and 1938, the Graf Spee was involved in 5 non-intervention patrols during the Spanish Civil War. The ship was also part of the coronation review for King George VI in May 1937, representing Germany. As tensions in Europe grew, the Graf Spee was sent to the South Atlantic just before the outbreak of World War II, strategically positioning itself along key merchant shipping routes. During a 3-month period in late 1939, the Admiral Graf Spee sank 9 merchant vessels, totaling over 50,000 tons. However, its campaign came to a head on December 13, 1939, during the Battle of the River Plate, where it faced off against 3 British cruisers. Although the Graf Spee caused significant damage to the British ships, it sustained damage as well and was forced to retreat to Montevideo, Uruguay. Believing that stronger British forces were en route, Captain Hans Langsdorff made the difficult decision to scuttle the ship rather than risk his crew. Even though parts of the ship were dismantled, sections of it remained visible above water for years afterward. The Admiral Graf Spee was a well-crafted warship, measuring 610 feet in length and featuring a beam of 71 feet. It had a maximum draft of 24 feet, 1 inch. The ship was originally designed with a displacement of 14,650 tons, but when fully loaded, that number increased to over 16,000 tons, exceeding the limit set by the Treaty of Versailles. Despite this, it was officially reported as staying within the 10,000-ton restriction. Powered by 4-man 9-cylinder diesel engines, the ship could reach impressive speeds of 28.5 knots, with an engine output of 54,000 horsepower. At a more moderate cruising speed of 18.69 knots, it could cover a range of 16,300 nautical miles. Initially designed to house 33 officers and 586 enlisted men, by 1935, the crew numbers expanded to include up to 1,040 sailors. The ship was equipped with a single catapult, though it didn't have an aircraft hangar. It originally carried a Heinkel He-60 floatplane, which was later swapped out for the more advanced Arado R-196 as war approached. Notably, the Graf Spee was also the first German warship to feature radar, employing the SeaTac system mounted on its foretop rangefinder. The ship's main firepower came from 6 11-inch guns, positioned in 2 triple turrets, one at the front and one at the back of the superstructure. In addition to this, the Graf Spee had 8 5.9-inch secondary guns, positioned midship. Initially equipped with 3 3.5-inch anti-aircraft guns, these were replaced in 1935 by 6 more powerful versions. By 1938, the anti-aircraft battery was overhauled, including 6 4.1-inch guns, 4 1.5-inch guns, and 10 0.79-inch guns. The ship also had a set of quadruple 21-inch torpedo tubes on its stern. When it came to armor, the Admiral Graf Spee had a belt that was nearly 4 inches thick. Its upper deck was 0.67 inches thick, while the main armored deck ranged between 1.8 to 2.8 inches. The primary gun turrets were well protected too, with armor 5.5 inches thick on the front and 3 inches on the sides. The Admiral Graf Spee was built by the Kriegsmarine shipyard in Wilhelmshaven. Initially ordered as a replacement for the aging Braunschweig battleship, her construction began on October 1, 1932, under project number 125. On June 30, 1934, she was launched, and the christening was performed by the daughter of Admiral Maximilian von Spee, the ship's namesake. After about 18 months of additional work, the Graf Spee was officially commissioned into the German fleet on January 6, 1936. For the first 3 months after commissioning, the Graf Spee underwent thorough sea trials to ensure she was fully ready for service. Konrad Patzig was the ship's first commander, but in 1937 he was succeeded by Walter Warzacka. Once operational, Admiral Graf Spee quickly became the flagship of the German Navy. In 1936, after the Spanish Civil War began, she was sent to the Atlantic for non-intervention patrols along the Republican-controlled coast of Spain. Between August 1936 and May 1937, the ship completed 3 patrols in the region. During this time, the Graf Spee also participated in the coronation review for King George VI at Spithead, England, in May 1937. After the event, she resumed her duties off the Spanish coast. Later that year, she completed 2 more non-intervention patrols, one of which followed fleet maneuvers and a brief visit to Sweden in early 1938. In that same year, Hans Langsdorff took command of the Graf Spee, leading her through a series of goodwill visits to various international ports, including Tangier and Vigo. As part of the fleet's ongoing maneuvers, the ship played a role in celebrating the reintegration of the port of Memel into Germany and participated in a fleet review held in honor of Admiral Miklos Horthy, the Regent of Hungary. From April to May of 1939, the Graf Spee embarked on another Atlantic cruise, visiting ports such as Ceuta and Lisbon. By August 21, 1939, with war looming, the Graf Spee departed Wilhelmshaven, heading for the South Atlantic. As World War II erupted in September 1939, Germany's strategy shifted. Adolf Hitler gave the order for the German Navy to begin disrupting Allied merchant traffic, targeting ships carrying goods crucial for the war effort. However, this move was delayed until it was clear that Britain wouldn't negotiate for peace after Germany's invasion of Poland. Once the order was issued, the Admiral Graf Spee received specific instructions to follow prize rules, which meant stopping and searching ships for contraband before sinking them and ensuring the crew's safety. Captain Langsdorff was also told to avoid combat, even with weaker enemies, and to change locations frequently to keep the Allies guessing. On September 1st, the Graf Spee met up with her supply ship Altmark near the Canary Islands to refuel. As they transferred fuel and other supplies, Langsdorff ordered some excess equipment, including flammable items and 2 anti-aircraft guns, to be transferred to Altmark for storage. Days later, on September 11th, while still in the process of refueling, the ship's Arado floatplane spotted the British cruiser HMS Cumberland. Langsdorff quickly ordered both ships to flee, successfully avoiding a confrontation. By September 26th, orders to target Allied merchant ships finally arrived. 4 days later, the Graf Spee found its first victim, the cargo ship Clement, off the coast of Brazil. After firing a distress signal, the Graf Spee captured the captain and chief engineer and allowed the rest of the crew to escape in lifeboats. The Graf Spee then destroyed the Clement with a combination of gunfire and torpedoes. To ensure the crew's safety, Langsdorff sent out a distress call to a nearby naval station in Pernambuco. The survivors later reached the Brazilian coast safely. By October 5th, the British and French navies had organized 8 hunting groups in pursuit of the Graf Spee. These groups included aircraft carriers such as HMS Hermes, Eagle, and Ark Royal, along with multiple battleships and cruisers. At the same time, Langsdorff continued his raids, capturing and sinking several more ships, including the Newton Beach and the Ashlea. The Newton Beach had been used to hold prisoners before being too slow to keep up with the Graf Spee, leading to its eventual destruction. By mid-October, the Graf Spee met with the Altmark again to refuel and transfer prisoners. Another ship, the Huntsman, was also captured and later sunk. Over the following days, the Graf Spee continued to wreak havoc on Allied shipping, including sinking the Trevanian on October 22nd. Later in the month, Langsdorff led the Graf Spee on a diversion mission into the Indian Ocean to throw off Allied forces. By November 15, the ship had returned to the Atlantic and sank the Africa shell. At this point, the ship required engine repairs and resupplied once more from the Altmark. During these operations, the Graf Spee's crew employed clever tactics to confuse the Allies. They installed a fake gun turret and added a second dummy funnel to alter the ship's profile, making it harder for the enemy to identify. Despite these efforts, the Graf Spee continued to press on, attacking the Doric Star and sinking it, which led Commodore Harwood to focus his fleet's search in the River Plate region. Throughout December 1939, the Graf Spee continued its campaign, but by December 12th, a mechanical failure in its Arado 196 floatplane left the ship without aerial reconnaissance. Langsdorff knew he was heading into dangerous waters near Montevideo, and as the situation grew more tense, he ordered the ship's disguise removed, preparing for the battle that WWII